One other scenario I would point out, because it parlays straight into the Texas Tech conversation, but this was shared to me by Jordan on Twitter, who says, here's another much more unlikely scenario that is similar. So BYU wins out, K-State wins out, and Texas Tech wins out. So Tech would be 11-1. That would mean that they win in Ames, which would be a massive win and likely a win over a top 10 team at that point in time. BYU would be unbeaten. They could even lose one in this scenario that Jordan lays out. And then it's BYU, Texas Tech, and Arlington. Winner is in. Does 11-1 K-State make it? So that'd be 11-1 K-State with a win in Ames at Iowa State. At that point, the Clones would have a couple of losses. I don't know. That I would still doubt it. I think it's less likely than more likely, but possible. And K-State, I think, has enough cachet built up from the last few years and preseason expectations and the Avery Johnson hype that it probably helps them a bit over a school like Iowa State in the previous scenario, even though, Iowa State has had a better start to the year. K-State has been a little bit more top of mind on the national landscape, in the course of the national landscape over the last few years. Played some really high-profile games last year. Didn't get over the hump to make the Big 12 championship game, but we're in that conversation. Preseason top 25 last year, ranked for a good chunk of the year, won the Big 12 in 2022. It's just a little more top of mind, I think, whereas Matt Campbell had a bit of a dip before beginning the resurgence last year and now really on the come up this year. I don't think that the Big 12 would get two in there. I think you'd be looking at the winner, but that could very well be Texas Tech. That absolutely could be Texas Tech that wins the Big 12. And so here's the conversation about the Red Raiders. I will admit I have a hang up here, but it's probably not an entirely fair one for this Texas Tech squad. So let's look at Tech right now. They are, so Yahoo Sports, I'm reading this Yahoo Sports article, and I was not expecting this. It was an article about the 20 teams that have a loss, at least a loss, so far this year, that are still in the hunt for the college football playoff, which, if you are somebody that advocates for the expanded playoff, this is one of the biggest selling points, that you're keeping more teams like that still engaged and still a part of the conversation this late in the year. Texas Tech is one of those teams. But as I'm reading down, I saw that they said 3 Big 12 teams would be mentioned. I thought, okay, so I was expecting to see K-State first. I did not. There's only one team in the category that says still a shot. The next category down was like still a shot but needs help. K-State and Arizona State were in that category. Colorado was even in another category beyond that. That was like crazier things have happened. But Texas Tech was the one team that was just in the still has a shot category. And the logic there was basically look at Texas Tech's schedule, and they're still unbeaten right now in conference play. And they're definitely not getting third run right now when it comes to the conversation, or even first or second. If you want to argue that, hey, they haven't lost a game in conference, they should be directly in the same conversation as a BYU or an Iowa State. I could understand Texas Tech fans making that case. And I mean, anytime I tweet anything about Iowa State or BYU, I hear about it from Tech fans in the mentions. So I know you guys are very much there and very much paying attention to that. So my question is, like, are we not paying enough attention right now to Joey McGuire's squad and what they're doing? I mean, really, the biggest thing is just looking at their schedule this year. If you want to realize why they're probably going to hang around and still be in this thing for a while, because they are 3-0 in the Big 12, wins at home over Arizona State and Cincinnati, which are aging better and better. Those two teams are a combined 9-3. They win at Arizona, and that's a game where it took a late fumble to make it happen, but they were in control for most of that game. Arizona, I don't think, is very good, but it's a road win. You're not going to apologize for that. Well, the next two games for Texas Tech are Baylor and at TCU. They've got Baylor at home on Saturday and then at TCU. And I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to Baylor and TCU, a once proud rivalry and a once proud couple of teams that we just talked about earlier in the show were competing for the playoff. That's not the case this year. I mean, Tech should win both of those games and they would then be at 7-1 heading to Iowa State on November 2nd, a game that I don't know that anybody at all really had circled at the beginning of the year as like, hey, this could be one of the biggest games in the conference. November 2nd, Texas Tech at Iowa State. Get ready for that game. That could be a monster game if Texas Tech is 7-1 and 5-0 in the Big 12 at that point. After that, they have a home game with Colorado. They're at Oklahoma State and a home game with West Virginia. I think those games are manageable enough. I still think that could get tricky. Oklahoma State, I don't really think that one will be so much, but Colorado would definitely be capable. And Texas Tech has had issues on defense throughout the year. Colorado is capable of taking advantage of that. West Virginia, maybe just a capable enough team overall. I don't feel as great about them in Lubbock, particularly if something big is on the line in that game. But you get the point. Like, that's a doable schedule for Joey McGuire and company. And they do have an excellent offense right now. I mean, Taj Brooks is Taj Brooks. He's just doing Taj Brooks things. I think he's got a great claim to be the number one running back in the conference. DJ Giddens might have something to say about that right now. Cam Scadaboo would probably have something to say about that right now. But I tell you what, you combine that with a much better Baron Morton than I expected this year, and Tech's got a really dangerous thing going on offense. I believe Baron Morton's TD to INT right now is 14-2. So I had my doubts about the ceiling of Morton as a quarterback. So far this year, it looks like he is shutting me up. He is proving me wrong there. The problem is, the other shoe for me is, one, the defense. I mean, I definitely still do have some concerns about the defense, but beyond that, it's just the history. And that, I think, is what's really working against Tech here and why you're not seeing more conversation generated about them right now. It also probably doesn't help that the first 2 weeks were that bad. Not only did they lose badly at Washington State, but they also damn near lost to Abilene Christian. 2-point conversion away from losing at home to Abilene Christian, gave up over 50 points. So it was easy to write them off. But Tech's history, Tech fans, I tell you guys a lot. I've had many an interaction with Texas Tech fans on Twitter where, inevitably in the offseason, Tech fans have kind of had this life cycle for the last, since 2009 of like really fired up in the offseason. They'll inevitably get some talent because they typically do, and they've got great resources there, and hype it up. We're excited. We're awesome. Why aren't you giving us more respect? Why aren't you giving us more respect? And then season starts, and then like very much self-loathing because of the way the season actually happens. I've seen that pattern repeat itself a bunch of times, and it started again this year. But now with Tech winning games, it's coming back around to the beating your chest part of it, which I get it. You should be fired up. But I do also remember very distinctly in my mind a 7-0 Texas Tech start in 2013 with Cliff Kingsbury at the helm as the head coach, and it ended 1-5, and they finished with an 8-5 record, and there still has not been a 9-win season since 2009. It's just a lot of history that would suggest the other shoe is about to drop here at some point for Texas Tech. That is not totally fair to Joey McGuire. That is not totally fair really to Taj Brooks or Baron Morton, even though they've been around for a number of these 6, 7, 8-win seasons, which is just where Tech has been kind of trapped, like in football purgatory, basically, since Mike Leach left in 2009. So I will admit that there is some definite hesitation for me. That is a hang up for me, just because I have seen it so many times. I'm very tempered with enthusiasm for them. But Tech has put themselves in position. No doubt about that. Put themselves in position to be in the conversation and to actually break through this year. So I wanted to make sure that Texas Tech gets its due respect and run there.